This is Akeem of Sami Arts. I've got a wonderful treat. It's been a little while since I've done any extra interviewing and being able to talk with some friends of mine, some people of true character. And that's who I'm bringing in tonight, Master Keith Sharp. He is a very decorated, I would identify as a very decorated artist and very varied and very disciplined. And what I'm also going to include in this video is a snippet of a wonderful form that he did. And this is interesting enough. This is 20 years ago, and it just shows you the meticulousness in his artwork. And the authenticity in the way that he brings the artwork, and that it's not just a person who's kicking and punching. He's truly an artist. And I really, really am thankful for being able to bring you in our conversation tonight and get to talk over your different forms of art and very varied areas of skill. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. You honor me with this few minutes you allow me to have. So I'm very honored to be here. You know, I've always admired you in your pursuits and everything. I'm real proud of you starting a organization, you know, in the Austin area. So the Austin residents should be very proud they have someone of your caliber and skill, you know, in that area they can go to for knowledge. And that's real important. Considering with what happened today, uh, martial arts, uh, when I started in America, it was a lot of times it was just who you could beat up in a competition or tournament. And so what that does sometimes it hampers growth. You know, it hampers mental and spiritual awareness and ability. There's nothing wrong with that competition, but when that's the total focus, you know, your students lose out. For example, I've taught students who were blind. I've taught students who were paraplegic in wheelchairs, one arm. And so an instructor who only concentrates on one facet of it is not able to reach someone else that may need it just as much or more, than that. And so that's what martial arts was meant to do. It was meant to assist and help those who were oppressed or downtrodden.
mm,
Okay, and so that's something that a lot of us kind of forgot, that it was invented for people who were really oppressed, especially people of color, in a lot of ways. So the similarities kind of go hand in hand in our learning process. Also, years ago, won't tell you who it was, but we were at a tournament. I can't remember if Alvin was there or not. It was what I'm telling you happened maybe 40 years ago. And one of the top heavyweight competitors in the country was there. And we were out at a park. And it was early. And so everybody, just kind of sitting around. And a little grass snake was crawling around the cookout table. And he saw it and he jumped straight up and jumped on top of this table, this cookout table. And he get man, that's it. And it shocked me because I thought, here's somebody who wrecked all the competitors at that tournament that day, and the grass snake was only about 8 inches long, you know. And so, which shows that everybody uh, has phobias. Everybody's vulnerable to a certain extent. But when you don't acknowledge that, you kind of cheat not only yourself, but your students as well. Okay,
mm,
and so that means you haven't grown. Your growth didn't happen. Uh, Great humanitarian heavyweight boxing champion Muhammad Ali once said, "If you have the same opinions now that you had 20 years ago, you wasted 20 years." And so there's supposed to be a growth level. There's supposed to be an improvement in the martial arts. Every time there's a new generation, there should be an improvement. And so that heavyweight champion, what that showed me was, if there was an emergency, you know, even though we have these guys, black belts can break boards and bricks. And I would tell my black belts, if you're sitting at your grandmother's table, say Thanksgiving, and she gets a bone caught in the throat, you don't know the Heimlich maneuver or first aid, and you have all these years of training and competition, and you can't save your grandmother who's choking on a bone. And
mm,
I say that to me that didn't make sense,
mm.
so that's why I incorporated, first aid and disaster preparedness, when I taught. I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure my students, if an emergency happened, if it was a flood or a tornado or a hurricane, and I told them I want you to be able to lead your family out of it,
Yeah.
because
So
you have all
holistic.
this training
Mm,
and, you can't do anything but fight someone else,
mm,
and you see, and that relates to your teaching as well. You have to be able to guide someone. For example, what happened in D.C., knowing where to go, how to go. Here in Washington State, Pacific Northwest, it's sometimes they call it Volcano Alley because there's a lot of these mountains of volcanoes that haven't erupted yet. So earthquakes, are scheduled to happen here somewhere. Every part of the world, there's something that will go on at one point. And if you happen to be there and not know, then, you go with it. And so what I wanted to make sure is that my students were able to survive a disaster or an implement, that it was because you're not fighting an opponent. What you're fighting is yourself,
mm.
and like I tell my students, I ask all new students, hey, who do you think your strongest opponent is? And they go, well, it's be some guy that's 6'8" and weighs 400 pounds. Say, no, your strongest opponent is you. My strongest opponent is Keith. I'm always trying to better Keith. That's
What
who my
what
strongest opponent is.
what made you like that? Was that initially is that with your first initialization into martial arts? Is that
It
what
was
you
a combination of things that happened. Uh, for one, I come from a single parent household. You know, my mother raised my younger brother and I. And so when we were when my younger brother was in elementary and I was in middle school, oh, it's junior high, they didn't tell him my age. It was called junior high at that time. Now it's middle school. But we couldn't, she wouldn't allow us to leave the front of the backyard to go down the street and play with other children. Now they could come over our yard, you know, but, you know, we couldn't go. So everyone in the neighborhood was saying, you know, Keith, mom's so strict and stern. They can't come out here. They can't go there. They have to be inside a certain time. And it wasn't until my younger brother and I were in our 30s that she told us why. My mother was one of the first black women in North Texas to run for state senate.
oh
She got a letter from President Johnson because she wanted to recommend him and nominate him as a civil rights president because of all the civil rights legislation. And
yeah
I have those letters. I'm producing a little video later on about. I have letters of African American history dating back to the late 1890s and
oh
photographs with it. So, you know, after my mother passed, I started collecting. But what she told us was the reason that she didn't want us to go is because when we were in elementary and middle school, my mother used to go to the African American churches and register black people to vote.
mm,
And so, you know, this is before she ran for Senate. Anyway, she received death threats.
mhm, mhm.
So she was afraid that something would happen to us. So we went to school and came back home. And we could stay in the yard in front of that, but we had to be where, you know, she could see us so she knew where it was. And so I thought that that had to take a lot. She was a teacher as well, public school, to go to school, teach, after that, work on civil rights for the community, get death threats, and still do it after
Yes.
receiving death threats.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons I got into martial arts
Mm,
in the late 1960s because of that. Because I didn't trust anyone else protecting me because from what I saw. Also,
mm,
there was a time I left, was walking home from junior high school, and I saw the police in Fort Worth, Texas. They had a young man, a boy rather. He wasn't in my grade, but he's from my junior high school. And they were shoving him up against the car and laughing. And he was sitting there crying, and one of them had the handcuffs, and he was spinning them around, clicking, saying, "You know, I ought to take you to jail." And the little boy was crying. So I was watching it. Now I'm like
mm,
12 or 13,
mhm.
so I'm watching. And I'm kind of confused. And then one of the officers looked at me and said, "What you looking at?" I said, "Nothing, nothing." You know, I'm 12 years old. He says, "Don't you lie to me. I saw you looking. You better get on down there before we have you up here too." And so I realized I was getting bullied in junior high school. They beat me up, take my lunch money. And then I thought, well, the cops aren't going to help me because look at what they're doing. They're just as bad as the people being. So that's why I got into martial arts, the
So you
original
learned.
reason.
So it
And then
sounds.
the instructor started telling me, you know, it's to better yourself. You don't seek revenge. You don't go out and get somebody. You're trying to make improvement to yourself. And when I have a black belt that wants to study or learn weapons or something from me, first thing I'll ask him, you know, he starts telling me all the trophies, all the medals, and that's good and fine. But I'll ask him, well, what kind of person are you? What have you done for your community? What have you done for your children? What have you done for your family? What have you done to make this world a better place? You know, and so then a lot of them, they kind of, you know, they have to think at that point. Also, there's a little plaque someone gave to my mother years ago, and it basically says on it that, you know, it goes to teaching, and it says 100 years from now, no one will know what kind of car I drove. They won't know how much money was in my bank account. They won't know what kind of stylish clothing I wear.
Mhm,
But the world may be a better place because of the difference I made in a child's life.
mm,
And so I have that, you know, at the dojo. to let other people see, but also to remind me that, this is one of the ways I can make this world a better place or help someone else to make it a better place.
Mm.
And that's why I'm so glad that you're teaching now and you're spreading the art because of your mental awareness, your social awareness, your interactive, with other people. And that's important in this world that we're living in now because in our community with disaster preparedness with Katrina, and I worked with a few people who, went there, and I worked with a few people who went to Haiti that,
Yeah.
not a lot of people are going to help us, if we don't learn to help ourselves, and, learn to grow, and not just from one standpoint or one segment of it. In medieval Japan, the martial arts was invented in Okinawa, not Japan like people think. And so the Okinawans had to develop a fighting art because they were oppressed by the Japanese and others. So that's why what we're doing now is because of that, because of something they invented partially. Okay, and it wasn't just Okinawa. The Philippines developed an art, Eskrima, Kali. They developed systems of fighting. So many countries had to take their foreign tools to use to defend themselves. And that's how, we're learning now. And somehow, sometimes we tend to forget that. And we think it's about gaining trophies and medals. That's part of it. There's nothing wrong with that. I have some. But I also realize if something bad happens, I want my students and my people to be able to survive. And so that's why, I teach the way I do, because of that.
What's some of the things that you've I guess found that is the biggest gap in teaching people about preparedness? I mean, you mentioned the gardener snake, like being comfortable with animals for one, but there was one that you and I were talking about the other day, which is an awareness being one of the greatest weapons that you really do have within
Yeah, it
your
is probably
awareness.
one of the most important because when
Mm.
we went, when I take groups camping, I teach wilderness survival. When I take group camping, hiking, backpacking, uh, last winter I took a group of snowshoe hiking, Snoqualmie here in Washington State,
Mm.
and what that teaches is that when you do that, you're awareness. So when I take groups hiking, and I used to work with gang intervention, and sometimes these are the real toughies. And I would tell them, if they show disrespect, and you know how, you and I, we're like wolves in sheep clothing. We don't look like we can do what we can do. All right, so because don't tell them this, but Alvin and Ernest, no, they look mean, they look tough, they look like they'll just hit you and knock you, but we don't, we don't portray that image per se, and so these young men, they weren't calling me Mr. Shaw to this, oh hey you, man, and so this on the drive out there. And when we get out there, they're talking loud. Sunset hadn't quite come up yet, so I explain. I say, "Hey, guys." They go, "What?" I say, "You need to listen." I say, "Where we are, there are 4 different species of rattlesnakes out here,"
Mm.
and everybody got pitch quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. And I said, "If you get bitten, come up to me quietly and say, Mr. Sharp, I've been bitten. Could you help me out? Because if you come up screaming and hollering, oh, Lord, help me, Lord, because that's going to circulate your blood fast. It's going to speed up that poison going through your system, and you won't make it. They go, oh, God, you shouldn't have told us that. I said, oh, I didn't tell you that. I go, my bad. And I said, so if you're talking loud too much, I'm going to sense it or hear it before I see it.
Mm.
And so you guys don't have any sense of awareness. I say a bear could walk right up on you behind you, snatch his paw behind your neck, pull you back, and you wouldn't know what was happening. I say, oh, by the way, another thing. If you mess up my tents, I'm gonna take them down. We all gonna sleep on the ground. You really don't want that. And I say, by the way, something else. If you're laying on the ground, you feel warm, wet snot dripping on your cheek. I say, don't move because it's not me. I say, bears, they'll walk over you. and stick their nose in bear's nose, always running, dribbling snot, and they'll dribble down your cheek. And I say, if you move or breathe too heavy, they may take your head off. I say, other than that, everything out here is fine. And then right on cue, coyotes started howling.
Ah,
And boy,
yes.
then from then on, it's, hey, Mr. Sharp, hey, what about this? And they were crowding around me, hugging. I said, hey, guys, give me room. You need to do this, you need to do that. And I asked a couple of young men to take the ice chest and put it in the trailer, had the food in it. They didn't do it. So I did it. And so I asked them, hey, those chests that I asked you to get, did you get them? You know how teenagers, no, he told her, no, you were supposed to do it. I say, oh, well, don't worry about it. That was our food. So I say, from now on, anything crawling, slithering, flying, catch it or trap it because it goes on the menu. And you mean we go out to eat wild stuff? I say, well, we can go fast in 3 days. It's either one. It's fine with me. So that group, several of them now, well, one of them's in law school, and he was an ex-gang member.
Wow.
I
Wow.
kept working with others because that was a way of showing them that, and also being a African American male, that's something you don't see us do quite
Mm,
a lot.
true.
I've taught snowshoe hiking, cross country skiing. I do that, and so those are things that stereotypes are placed on us because people want you to believe or put you in a box and say you're not supposed to be able to do this. I want you to stay here, right here. That like Nelson Mandela would tell people in South Africa before they imprisoned him. He said, "I will not be who you want me to be." And martial arts is a way of ensuring that our people are not controlled by someone who wants them to be in a certain spot so they can control them.
Mm,
So martial arts teaches an independence. I wanted my students to think for themselves. I wanted them to do things that, everyone else does. I often ask students, hey, guys, who was the first in the world to make paper? And everybody looks around and I say, well, actually, there's two. The first humans in the world were Africans to make paper in Egypt. However, they were not the first people and ones in the world to make paper. I say wasps were the first in the world to make paper. Those nests, that's paper.
mm.
And
Wow.
so you can use those wasp nests, and if you keep up with the old ones and pack them in a little bundle, you can use that to start fires in the winter when it's raining because it's paper. Just stick it under the woods, a little wax, you can use it. The lint from your dryer, save it, put it in grocery bags or something, because you can sprinkle that underneath logs and it'll help start wet wood,
Good
you know.
kindling.
And so,
Mm.
so lint has an important part in doing that. I try to teach them things. For example, this. Most people in our community, can you still hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Most people in our community never seen this. Now, this is bear spray.
Bear spray. Hmm.
Okay, it's not sold much in Texas. Okay, but in any outdoor stores, Sports and Field, REI, they have it. It has a little tab here. You pull that off, stick the finger, and you press here, and that creates a spray. Bear spray has a reach of 30 feet. Okay, whereas mace or pepper spray, 5 or 6. It has a belt loop on it here, so you can put it on your belt. So if you see a bear charging and you're hiking, you pull it up here and it's ready. Now, the reason that's important is because people thought years ago if you put, don't put this in your backpack, because if you put it in your backpack and you see a bear, say 50 yards away, and he comes from behind a tree. Now they're undoing the backpack, setting it down, they're unzipping it, thumbing through it. I know I got that bear spray in it. And then it's too late. She's on top of you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and see, but that's a martial artist uh, attitude
Mm,
about reaction, about timing, about focus. And so somebody years ago had that same spirit and thought, just setting this stuff in the backpack's gonna get you killed. Okay. Also knowing your surroundings. When I take groups wilderness outing, and I say, hey, look, sometimes we'll have on bear bells. They're little bells you attach to your belt, so when you walk,
mm,
it rattles. If the
mm,
bear doesn't see you at first, it'll make him run. But sometimes bear bells don't always work. That's why you have first, second, third, and fourth plan of action in case the first three don't work.
mm,
Okay, you always have that. You should have that in self defense too. And I tell students never rely on any one system, technique, or method to defend yourself with against another human.
mm,
I don't care if you got to spit in his face, bite, pull his eyelashes. I'll use anything that works, right, to save your life. You always do that. And going. I would mention to students, quick way to end the fight. Guy has nose piercings or ear piercing, just grab it, pull it, tear it off. That starts out. So and it looks worse than it really is. But your sense of awareness keeps you alive.
mm,
Okay, it makes you doing it. So knowing that a bear runs 35 miles an hour, I've had people say, "Well, hey, Sensei, that's not that fast." Because sometimes my car I go 40, 45, and that's slow to me. I go, "Oh," I say, that sprinter from Jamaica, Hussein
Same
Bolt,
bolt. Yeah.
won all the gold medals. I said his top speed is 28 miles an hour. Then they go, "Oh." Most bears run at the speed of an Olympic sprinter, so you're not going to outrun them.
And their
Okay.
endurance is magnificent. You can't endure them either. You can.
Yeah, and
You,
also I've seen them run through brush so thick that you couldn't drive a car through it. But I've seen 1,500-pound grizzlies run through it.
and they
Okay,
climb trees.
yeah, and because some can, some bears when they're cubs, their claws are curled, and as they get older, they straighten out. So it depends, the region, that they're from. Uh, Bears are unpredictable. Rule of thumb: bear 100 yards. Uh, Elk, uh, moose, and buffalo 25 yards minimum. And so, but again, that has to do with martial arts.
Mm,
If an earthquake happens here, and it's at night, say it's 2 or 3 in the morning. So I thought years ago, if there's a fire or if it's a disaster or an event late at night, you're not going to have any lights. So you can't reach over and cut on your night lamp to put on your clothes. So that means you have to put on your clothes, put on your shoes, and do it in a few seconds. If you have small children or babies, that it's hard for you to wake them up for school. Now it's 2 or 3 in the morning, so you got to run in your bedroom and dress them without seeing them in a few seconds to get them out for all of you to stay alive.
mm.
And so that's something like a block in karate. It has to be practiced, like anything else. So I would suggest to students on the weekend, guys, you got small children, blindfold them and tell them to find the back door and walk out in case there's a fire. Have them get up and blindfold them, have some clothes. In other words, by my bed, I have some sweats that I put on for emergencies. I don't need to see them. I have shoes that I slip on. I can do them in less than 3 seconds. Okay, that's martial arts. It's not fighting, it's not sparring in a tournament, but that's martial arts.
So
Okay,
the
and so you should be able to have your family ready and out of the house if there's a disaster and you're walking at night trying to find shelter. Remember, if it's a hurricane, there's chances are, or earthquake, chances are power lines have fallen and it may be in a puddle of water, so you may not be able to see it. So that's why you have kill lights in doing that, so you can see from a distance. And so, and again, that's awareness,
yes,
knowing where you are, how
yes.
you do that. So, martial artists, years ago, you were taught how to survive. You were taught how to find water. I teach students how to purify water. I bake chicken in a tool chest. I bake chicken in a box, a cardboard box.
Mm,
Turned it into an oven. I bake chicken on a exhaust manifold when it's hot. Wrap it in foil, put chicken legs on it, open a can of beans, put it on it. Right after it stops, and it'll heat up. You take the can of beans off, it's boiling, it's bubbling. So that's fuel that you didn't have to use because it's going to cool down anyway. Okay,
mm,
but again, that's to me that's martial arts because
mm,
it's a sense of awareness of knowing how to do that. And so I guess that's the way I teach. I want to make sure because through history is a lesson. It teaches you. History can repeat itself for the good or bad.
mm,
Today it did it for the bad, and so you have to learn something about history. And in some schools they wouldn't teach history, and so you had people not doing like, oh, today's my birthday. I'm 67, and so
happy
I'm still
birthday.
doing the things that I did, 30, 40 years ago.
Mm,
My diet, my training, my health. And so I tell all my students who are in their late 20s, you want to develop practices now because 30 years from now it's going to be hard to do.
mm.
And so I'm always mentioning to them, I haven't eaten beef or pork in well over 25 years.
Wow.
You know, so I haven't had a soda in over 20 years. And so that's helped me. It helps my system. And so you got to do everything you can to keep yourself alive. For example, I don't have calluses on my knuckles, and I've had black belts say, well, I got to develop calluses so I can. And there's nothing wrong with that. I've broken boards and bricks. I don't do it often, but I have done it. And a master years ago, Okinawan master, told me. He said, don't callous your hands. Don't do that because that
Mm,
destroys the body. And
mm,
he was in his late 80s, and arthritis was so bad he couldn't clench his fist.
mm,
So what he did, he would roll his hand down his side to make a fist. Now he could stick his fingers through a brick wall, but he couldn't make a fist. And there
mm,
were other things he couldn't do. And he says, you don't want to do this. Your hands are hard enough to hurt someone in self-defense. But he says you want to have. He kept saying longevity, longevity in your body, and so I always wanted to do other things. And had I done all the callousing and the things that a lot of people say do, I wouldn't be able to ski now or rock climb, mountain climb, canoeing, kayaking, all of those things that require flexibility in the joints and limbs and arms. You need to think about that in the future. Also, in an emergency, in case you have to climb out of something, you want
yes.
to be able to do that. So that's why. For example, when you went to Peru, it's beautiful. But if you go too deep in the jungle, that beauty is still there, but it's also a danger.
Mm,
Even now, before I sit down, I'll look underneath a chair because in the Amazon there's always snakes somewhere. Something always biting you, leeches.
spiders. Yeah.
So I do that now because it's a habit now. So I look before I put on my shoes. I shake them. Because
Yeah.
other places, scorpions and spiders, that's a
Scorpions.
nice little home
Yeah.
for them to live, and that's habit. I don't even think about it because if I try to not do it because I'm in an apartment or in the city, I know something bad is going to happen one day because I'm going to go out to the jungle again and I haven't been practicing that habit, and it's going to end up bad. So, like I tell students, if you practice a hard punch or a kick or a block with force all the time, when you need it, it's going to be there. And I say, now, if you slough off in class and low and you do a soft punch and you think the instructor not looking and you're doing these weak punches, one day you're coming out of 7-Eleven with a sack full of groceries, you get attacked, And what are you going to give him? What you've been practicing, a
Yeah.
soft punch.
What you've been practiced.
So you're going to do what you practice all the time. And so martial arts has many life lessons, hundreds of them, that, an instructor should constantly give that to the student. Look at that student's growth. And basically, that's what I've been trying to do. I do a little bit differently, but, that's what I try to do.
That's spectacular. And that's the way that you're teaching holistic, artistic, like connectedness and engagement, nature watching. I was just listening to you and I was summarizing all the different angles that you went in here, all the different pieces of the pie of your teachings. What I'm also hearing is there is a perpetual connectedness with always being able to be in any environment and
Mm-hmm.
thrive without having to add additional thought patterns because you're
Right.
already thinking it, you're already doing it, you're already implementing it.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, you can actually be the same anywhere you go, and
Yeah.
it can be effortless, which means if you get injured, that's less to be distracted by to get through the injury
Yeah.
because
There's
you're
an old samurai saying the samurai had a bunch of creeds. One of them was, I have no enemies. I let incautiousness and carelessness be my only enemy. And so, and that, like I give a demonstration when I teach women self defense. I say, well, hey, you're walking down the street. You see a guy coming this way. Let's say he's an old biker, rough. He's cussing at a bottle of beer and he's going up like this. And so you say, ooh, I don't want to walk by him. On this side of the street, you see a guy in a business suit. His businessman has on an Armani suit, $2,000 or $3,000 suit, expensive briefcase. You say, I'm gonna walk across the street because he looks like he's all right. So you walk across the street to avoid this guy that's coming here, and you're walking by this guy because you think it's safe. Well, the thing about that is, it's the awareness is absent because most of the serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer and others, were very polite, very intellectual, very intelligent, very articulate in their speech.
Mhm.
And that's how they were able to kill so quickly because you didn't expect them to do that.
Yeah. So
And like years ago, there was a survey they did with children in kindergarten. They said, "What is a bad man?" And all of them said, he got these big fangs, kind of like a vampire, and claws, and a cape like Dracula. That was a bad man to them.
mm,
So a man that's dressed nice and talks intelligent and very professional, that's not a bad man. And so, my daughters, I would go over that with them. Just because he's starring a football team and you think he's good looking and handsome and strong enough, doesn't mean he's a nice person. It just means that's just the way he looks.
mhm.
And so, you again, your sense of awareness, like the Samurai Creed saying, be cautious. Don't be incautious. Be aware of your surroundings. You have the same rule, just like before I put on shoes, I shake them. I do that every time, and
So
I've been doing that
how do you
over
keep your
45 years.
serenity? How do you keep your serenity and because here's an interesting line to walk because people who are tend to be aware, there's this other side that people think that you're going to have. The more you think about these different angles of these possibilities that can happen, the more schizophrenic a person can be. There's a line to walk where you can be aware of what's going on, and the line where you can keep chill and aware and poised to
Yeah,
activate if needed.
yeah. I tell my students a joke sometime. I say, just because I'm paranoid, it doesn't mean there's not someone out there trying to get me. So and I say, you know, uh, I'm aware all the time. You
Mm,
know, when I come out of a store, or I say, if you're in a line at a store, a Safeway, and you get something that costs $4, you give that cashier $100 bill. They give you $95 and change. Person standing behind you is kind of, looking
yeah.
and may follow you out. And I ask students this: I say, when does a fight start between two people? When does it start?
Mm.
They go, when he come, when the dude first come up to you, start talking trash, or he push you, or say something bad, mean about your family. They go, no, that's not when it starts. When does it start? I say, when it first enters his mind. It's just you aren't aware of it yet. So if I come out of my house and there's a guy down the street that's thinking I'm gonna go ahead and rob him, the fight started. I just don't know about it yet. That's why you train, so your reaction can take over when the physical part happens. But the fight starts when the thought is in someone else's mind.
Mm.
Okay, you just aren't aware of it. And
And
so that's why, in the dojo, you train. There's another samurai saying that says, bleed in the dojo, laugh on the battlefield. And so, you hurt in the dojo. So on the street, or when someone is a home invasion, someone kicks in your front door. And here's where I mean by being awareness. And I tell students, especially women, if you want to stop someone from snatching your purse, become a purse snatcher. How would you do it? How would you do it and get away? Where
mm.
would you do it? Who would you choose? I say, and I've had students. I give written tests, and I say, let's say it's a Super Bowl and the virus wasn't here. And what do people do in the Super Bowl? Everybody's inside, the TV's up, they're jumping up and down for their team, shouting. So that's noise coverage. So if I was going to rob, say I robbed a store and I'm running down the street because cop car is looking for me, I'm gonna pick a house to invade just to chill out for a little while. Now, what I would do, I would try to look to see toys in the yard or swing toys in the backyard if I could see it. Because if I kick in that door and there's a big guy in there, because I don't know who's in there, all I need to do is grab one of the small children, put the gun ahead, and say, "Everybody, sit down, shut up, be cool."
Mm. Mm.
Okay, and that's what I tell women with small children, or men walking their children. I say, he knows you're gonna fight, but if he grabs your daughter or your son, he knows that's going to keep you in check.
Mm.
So I'm aware of what's going. So we have drills in the dojo where you hold your child's hand and we walk. And I say, if something comes up, you don't have time to tell, hey, come over here. You just grab the hand and maneuver. It may hurt, it may even do something, but you grab and maneuver and use techniques based on how you're walking and how you're fighting. In other words, you're prepared to be attacked while you're pushing your baby in a stroller or while you have a backpack on. Again, that's awareness. In the dojo, I have a little this doll, life-size doll, call him Junior, and it's 20 pounds of sand inside it. So I'll throw it to one of the students and have other students attack him. So they have to spar while keeping this baby coverage using kicks and maybe one hand.
Mm.
Okay. And that teaches realism if you have a small child that you're trying to protect while being attacked.
While being attacked.
Okay. And so, it gives it more of a realism part to it. Also, I have a card table and I'll have a couple of people sit down in it. I'll have a paper plate there, and I have these little rubber forks and spoons there, because I say, now if I was gonna fight somebody, I don't like to struggle and be cutting, spitting, slugging it out. Say, I'm gonna let him get full.
Mm.
I say, I'm gonna let him go to Red Lobster, get the double plate special, four glasses of extra large tea, apple pie, and ice cream on top. And when he comes out, his belt buckle's about to burst open. He's picking his teeth. That's the time to attack him. You don't attack him when he just come out of the gym or the dojo working out. And I
Mm.
say, again, you have to think sometimes like an attacker. You have to become one, to put yourself in that position.
So you can see your gaps. So you can see using mindfulness basically to
Right.
create a self-awareness about your strengths and your weaknesses.
And your weaknesses.
So
You
you
have to
can
look at your weaknesses where you are. So I have students attack other students while they're sitting down, while you're laying down, when you're laying in bed. And I say, number one, you're laying in bed. and someone's inside your home. He's broken in 1, 2 in the morning. You hear him. Now, most, you see on the movies, they go, "Who is it? What you want?" That just alerts him to where you are exactly.
Yeah.
So he can get rid of you. If you cut on a light, that alerts him to where you are.
Yeah.
And so the thing to do, I say, number one, you don't want him to know that you're aware. If he comes to the door and he sees you under the covers, you don't try to kick out fast because you can't. And I have students, we have a mat and I have some blankets and I have them lay down with a pillow. I says, and we had a little rubber knife. I say, he's going to stab you. See how quickly you can get out and stop that knife. And
Mm.
by the time they threw out the covers, he stabbed him a couple of times. I say, the covers are like a shield. You just lift them up and you entrap with the cover. So the
Trap.
cover becomes an assistant. Again, that's awareness. That it's martial arts. You're not, coming into a ring and bowing and then squaring off is one thing, but most fights are not going to start on an even basis. They're going to start uneven. Okay,
Mm.
because I want to be successful in mugging you. I want to get this money because I need a fix on drugs or whatever the reason is. So I want to be so I don't want, especially if it's a big guy, I don't want to be slugging it out with somebody. So I'm a cheat.
Mm.
Okay, I'm gonna come up from behind. I'm gonna do a lot of little things, that you're not aware of. So sometimes even the strongest fighter can be caught off guard because they have fighting experience in the ring for competition, but not awareness fighting just out on the street because they're not expecting that to happen.
Yeah.
What happened in Washington today? One of the reasons that happened,
Well, and
and
let me preface that too. For all who are watching this video, you may or may not see it at the exact same time, but he even hinted at this two, three different times since we've talked today. But it's the ransacking of Washington D.C. Capitol happened today. Security was overrun. People were running up and down. The people who got through the security were going up and down the different areas. They were trashing Nancy Pelosi. She's Democratic House Representatives. They trashed her office. And there were other things that they were doing. They were running around. Basically, it was rampant, and all kinds of crazy things could have happened. Yeah, they admitted they were completely overrun. They under anticipated any sort of negative response on this key day, which happened to also be the day where the votes were finally counted. And
mm-hmm.
well, the president, Donald Trump, was advocating people fighting for him. So they decided to take it to a physical and storm the White House to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So with Keith, with that in mind, what what are you suggesting that people's mentality be about defending their homestead? In this case, the White House is one aspect, but I'm hearing a lot of really practical ways to defend your house from home invasions and multiple attackers.
One of the things to do is to prevent child kidnapping. You live in a home, you know, sometimes not to get everybody to try to redo their home, but plant bushes outside the window that have thorns, rose bush, because crooks don't like to get all stuck, and and they're going to avoid that.
Mm.
Okay. Also, inside your home, arrange things inside your home where if someone really doesn't know what's in it, that he trips and gives you a warning. Okay, so he hits his knee, or it gives you a little bit of an early warning to that. If you can get to your child's bedroom, that's where you're going to defend. In doing that, other little things to do, and this is again awareness. If you're not there and somebody breaks in, they go look in the bedroom. They're going to look in the jewelry case on the dresser, and he's gonna pick out the diamonds, red, whatever he can find. Sometimes I recommend students, hey, you going out of town, take all your valuable stuff, wrap them in a grocery bag, and put them at the bottom of the dirty clothes hamper. Crooks aren't going to look at that. They're not interested in dirty drawers. So they're not going to put. Also, underneath the sink in the bathroom, is a good place to play. There's nothing but calming and cleansers, so they're not interested in that. I said, anticipating, for Christmas, you buy a widescreen TV, 80 inch, and everybody set stuff out in the front for the trash to pick up. I said, there are people that drive up and down the street that do nothing but look for that. And they
That's
go,
good for
they
them.
got an 82 inch. We can come back and get that. Cut it up, put it in a trash bag. So nobody knows what you have. Those that use Christmas trees, if you and all you want people to see them, so you put them by the window. What a good burglar will do is just smash the window, reach inside, grab a bunch of gifts, and take off.
Mm.
The best burglar alarm in the world, he still got away. It only takes a few seconds. So I said, up until the day of Christmas, just get some empty boxes, put some old paper in it, maybe a block of wood. I had one student put a brick in one. So if they go running down the street with that, and it looks decorative because all the gifts around the tree, but they're not real gifts. So you don't suffer a loss. Okay, and also in case you have a family member that likes to sneak and open gifts for birthdays and stuff,
Yes.
put something in it like a empty water bottle and wrap it with paper around it so they'll look at it and the confusion on their faces. Well, why he give me, why Akeem give me this empty Coke bottle for a gift? And,
Lump of
and
coal.
perplexed, so all they can do, they can't tell you they sneaked and looked, so they just got to put it back,
Mm.
and that's, but what that teaches you again is you're not being paranoid, you're just, it's like having a spare tire and a jack in your car.
There you
I don't
go.
want to get out there, and I'm sure nobody else wants to get out and jack up that car and take off a flat tire, but you wouldn't want to drive without it.
Right.
Just because the tires are new on your car, you say, well, I can save some gas if I leave this tire and this jack in the garage, and not have to, I have more room in my trunk. But
Yeah.
still, you don't want to, you want to risk that. So
Yeah.
what you do is you plan for an emergency of having a flat tire. Okay. And that's why you do those things. A self-defense has to be pre-planned. On the job training in an emergency or in self defense is too late. If you don't have the items that you need in a disaster or any type of emergency, when it happens, you only got a few seconds to do the correct thing, anyway.
Mm.
So what you're trying to do is you're trying to alleviate and also teach your children, if there's a disaster, say a tornado comes through San Antonio, bad, and wrecks everything. Now, you're on one side of town at work. Wife is on the other side of town at work. Children are on the other side of town in school. How are you going to meet up? Everything is different. So you have to have a meeting place that all of you know how to get to. That comes as a second point. You have small children, have them walked, so they'll know about walk and how to avoid strangers. In other words, have them walk from the elementary school and you follow them at a distance. Get them used to walking so in case they have to, they can do it. And you have a secure meeting place, a first, a second, a third, and a fourth meeting place, because the first place you chose may have been demolished
Mm. Mm.
or you may not be able to get there. So you
Multiple
have to have an
altitudes.
alternative, meeting place. Like I say, a second, third, fourth, or fifth area to go to. So
Mm.
that's why preparation in self defense or in awareness has, it's like a circle with a bunch of tentacles, and so each one has a purpose. And so in my school, I try to teach that to the students. Yeah, we in a tournament, we've done them a lot. You've seen us do that, but I want you to be able to keep your family alive in case you only got one chance. A tournament, you can always say, well, I lost this match, I'll come back next tournament in a couple of weeks. Or you playing football, well, we not didn't do too well this first quarter, so there's a second quarter and then the second half. In a real life situation or in a disaster, you may
Mm.
only have one chance
One chance, and that's
to
your
do
life
something.
or your family's life. you know,
Yeah.
so your thought process can make all the difference in the world. And this also brings me to something else that came up. Have you, and this is also going back to some of my studies about the samurai and Bushido code. They were
Mm-hmm.
also talking about how you can pick up the intent of a possible attacker and
Mm-hmm.
diffuse that intent before. Now, I'm also hearing that Taoists, some old Taoist masters also are training or trained in being able to extinguish the thought patterns and cut it like energetically. I mean, that takes tons of training. I know it's possible.
And years, decades of
Mhm.
practice and training,
Yes.
and the awareness when someone's going to do something. For example, Vietnam. I've never been in the military, but I registered for the draft because it was a law. Because I still remember my mother taking me down to the board when I was 18 and to
Mhm.
register. I got my draft card somewhere now, still probably in storage.
Mhm.
But the Vietnam War ended just when I was graduating from high school. But most people did not want to talk about the war. My cousin passed away about a year ago, and he was in Vietnam, late '60s. And you know me how I like history, but he never would talk. He would mention something, but I don't want to talk about it
Mm.
because it was so horrific,
Yeah.
and see a lot of uh, people of color when they came back, they had a lot of psychological, emotional difficulties because of what went on there. What the VC did is they didn't have the armament or the weapons or the money to purchase all that. So what they did is they had the strong will to win.
Guerrilla warfare
So I've
tactics.
had people say everything they did they used against you. So when you threw down a soda can, they would take that soda can, cut it up, peel it so it has sharp edges, put a fishing line in between two bushes. So at night when you're running, it would take and cut that off. Everything you dropped or you used that you thought was useless, they would use. And so that showed a determination, that, yeah, you got the tanks and the helicopters and the planes, but, we're not going to give up.
Mm.
Okay. And you see, that's what, made the difference. And so when I explain to students about intent, I say your awareness when someone, and I tell young ladies this, if, you going out with this guy first time and something doesn't feel right, listen to it. Just say, well, you know what, I don't feel good. Just say, listen to it. Listen to how he talks. If he's always cursing or he hates animals, always kicking, throwing rocks at cats and dogs, that's something that is gonna come at you later on. If he's always talking about his mother, man, that woman gets on my nerves. He's talking about his mother and his sister like that. Think of how he's gonna talk about you later on.
Eventually. Yeah.
So you listen to signs. There are things that give signs that something's going to happen. And so again, that goes to awareness. Everything always falls back to awareness, whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, or someone waiting down the street with a tire tool to hit you on the head. It's awareness. And
There's this saying that I'd heard from one of my friends. He tells me that he'd rather be a a warrior in the garden rather than being a gardener in the middle of a war.
mm-hmm,
And just having that mentality alone helps to see in advance possible things that happen, and being able to be in a place of serenity and awareness of your strengths and your weaknesses can also
yeah,
create an energy not of paranoia, as people
mm-hmm,
talk about, when you're just thinking about all the possibilities and you're
mm-hmm,
preparing in advance for these possibilities. It brings you to a place of serenity because this is going back into the old term, knowing thyself. You knowing yourself, which, like you said, the greatest enemy leads you to the place of where your real work is. Even these things that happen to us, I mean, it's unfortunate, these things that happen to many of us, they also serve as key items of training, tools, opportunities of growth, and opportunities to take your life experiences and be able to share them with others, as you've done so much here. And you've taught us so much about nature awareness and preparedness, disaster preparedness and mentality, both in city, out city. You know, the mentality of being able to be in the Amazon jungle and still survive and do effectively there, just like you would in Northwest Washington, where you live these
Yeah.
days. You know, and there's a wonderful way that you can be at peace and being prepared at the same time.
Yeah. And that's why, I teach the way I've, always done for, years, been in martial arts 50 years.
Mm,
And so I'm still learning. You always learn. You spend the rest of your life learning, and growing. And so, you constantly look for guides, there. Uh, Time before last, when I went hang gliding, there was a hawk that flew nearby, and I watched him, and he was just soaring, you know. Uh, and so the hawk did a circle, weird maneuver that no plane could do. And so for a second, I thought about it. Go, no, I better not try that, because what he was doing was letting me know that, hey, Keith, you may be flying, but I'm still a master of the skies,
mm,
and I respect that, and he is, and that lets you know. For example, rabbits know that they don't have anything to fear from vultures, because vultures eat dead things. People think animals are dumb; they're really not.
just dead
So
animals. Yeah.
over the centuries, what hawks have learned to do is when they go see over a rabbit's den, they see a rabbit, they soar like a vulture. Now they're way up in the air, so the rabbit looks up and go, "Oh, it's just vulture circling." Okay, so he comes out looking for food, the rabbit,
Mm,
and the hawk still soars, quietly until it gets slow enough to really go after the rabbit, and then the rabbit's tried to make it to his den. So it depends on who does what first. But what the hawk has learned to do, and what I tell students about that, is the hawk knows for a little while he has to become a vulture
mm,
in order to catch food.
mm,
So he's not a hawk for a certain amount of time.
mm,
And I
mm.
say, when you get attacked, you have to become someone that you're not. So sometimes you may have to become very vicious, in self defense. I cannot be Keith and defend myself against someone like a serial killer. I have to become someone that's very vicious like him, and then go back to being Keith.
Mm.
And so that again, that takes a lot of discipline, that takes a lot of awareness. And you see, that's why a lot of people wanted to just find a quick way to be able to kick and punch. You know, uh, in the '70s, they used to say stuff like, "You want philosophy? You go take a college course." And you see, and all of these people are really not around, or they're really not doing that well right now
Mm,
physically, because they missed out on an opportunity,
mm,
or many to better themselves, and
mm,
that passed down, with other students, in doing that. I think we were talking about a while ago. I mentioned certain fighters on the East Coast. I'm gonna have to check, see if they're okay now. But when they started, you had very few African Americans in competition. Very very few, and a lot of times there was cheating going on, and you know what I'm talking about, because it was still, martial arts was supposed to be an even temple, like the word dojo. Okay, people identify that with martial arts, but it's really not solely for martial arts. It means place of enlightenment.
mm,
That's why if you go by a Buddhist temple, you'll see dojo on the top. And I told beginning students, I don't mean you can go in there and ask them what kind of fighting y'all do, because they don't. It's an area of spiritual enlightenment. That's what it means. Okay, that's why you some because somebody mentioned that. Hey, they say you know that Buddhist temple they got a dojo. I said no, that's not the dojo you're thinking of. Dojo is place of enlightenment. It's spiritual enlightenment. That's what it literally means. Okay, and they go, oh, okay, so it's not just for karate. I said no, karate is a spiritual enlightenment, or it's supposed to be.
Mm,
It's like the holder of a hammer. You can use it to build a church or a school, or you can use it to knock somebody's brains out. Depends on who has a hammer in their hand. Okay,
mm,
and so that's why it's important to find a good instructor, that exhibits some of these qualities. You know, uh, I tell students, other cities, just go sit down and talk to him, watch a class, see how he teaches his class, see what he tells his students. Don't necessarily listen to what he tells you when you're in the office. He's trying to get you to sign that contract, or how tough you're going to be in 12 months. Just sit and watch a class. Just say, I like to watch a class. And there's some say, well, no, you can't watch unless you join. And so I would say, well, I kind of, move on. Would you buy a car without starting it or drive
right.
it? I mean, you need to ask yourself that. I kind of move on.
Absolutely. Well, I know that we've talked about some bits and pieces of your martial arts career. Did you also want to go into some of the different parts of the world? Because I heard that you'd gone to Peru.
Hmm.
Uh, I had also heard that you'd done survival work. You've also done some helping some of the Hurricane Katrina survivors. You've done some work with in Haiti as well with some of these same like hurricane survivors as well. You've been to different parts of the world, from what I understand, but I haven't always heard the specific parts of the world that you've been in at work and worked in. And it seems like this mentality that you had before you started traveling, and I'm really curious to see were there any key places that really brought you to the next level with your preparedness in your life
Martial
travels?
arts kind of prepared me for that. Alaska had a lot to do with it. Alaska, still kind of the untamed frontier. There's still great deals of semi-unexplored areas. You can still pan for gold there. There's some parts in Yukon, Canada, that you can pan for gold in.
Uh,
There's even a TV show about it now. And I've met a few guys, not those. I've met a few guys that, and I found a few nuggets maybe 30 years ago, nothing to brag about, but just to see what it was like,
mm,
to see what panning for gold was like. And I used to get up in the morning, uh, try to find some duck eggs and some honey, and that was my breakfast. And catch a salmon. That was good times.
mm,
You know, uh, I've been fishing and in some rivers and had bears. This one particular bear one year, he was maybe a half a mile from me, big one too. And we went there almost every morning. This spot where the trout, salmon come, we go there every morning, and never had any problems. He'd stand on his hind legs and look, and I look at him, no problem. Then one day, he was twice as far as where he usually is, and he chased me.
wow.
You know, see, because they're unpredictable. And it
What,
could have been something I did. It could have been maybe from a farther distance. I look different. You know, you don't know exactly why, but that's not the time to try to figure it out. The time to find somewhere to safe. To go. I've had a bear keep me up a tree for a day and a half. It rained on us
I guess this
a
is one
little
that
bit.
couldn't climb. This is one that couldn't climb and you just stand there waiting for you.
Yeah. And now they'll do other things. They'll come up and first try to push it to try to see if the roots are weak, see if it'll fall down. When
Oh,
that doesn't work, they may try to dig the roots around it.
wow.
And then he just sat there and stayed.
Oh my God.
And I talked to that bear. I sung to him, and he
Oh,
looked up and turned his head like that, and this day. And then after about a day and a half, he said, "Well, I got other things to do, so I'm tired of fooling with Keith." So he kind of walked off. And I'd wait to get over 100 yards, and I started to climb down. He turned around, look, and started chasing. I climbed back up. We did that deal 3 or 4 times until I finally just wait till he went so far I couldn't see him.
wow.
But it taught me a lot about about life in general
Mm,
and appreciating little things. I told this to some people. I don't know if even told it to Alvin or not, but some years ago, I was trying to follow a moose just to get data on it, about what it was doing. And so anyway, winter storm came early, and I couldn't get off that area in time before the snow came, and so I ran out of food, and I went a couple of days, several days without until I got real dizzy. Temperature dropped close to 40 below.
mm, wow.
And so everything was hurting. When people tell you if you're freezing, don't go to sleep, that's true because you won't wake up.
Wow.
Because when you start to sleep, during hypothermia, when you sleep, the pain stops, but that means you're dying,
Wow.
so you don't wake up. So uh, I saw a little log that had a hollow section in it, and so I crawled in it, and I was praying because it was close to Thanksgiving, and I thought that I was thinking I wasn't going to see my family anymore. I was going to die and this, and so I thought this could be my casket because if it
Mm,
gets covered with snow by the time spring comes, it would have been rotted out,
mm,
and part of my body would have been eaten by something. So I was thinking of all this, and
mm.
I saw some frozen grub worms inside the wood, and I ate them, and that's what kept me alive. And I realized it was Thanksgiving, so I didn't pray for any turkey or dressing or sweet potato pie, nothing like that. What I prayed for was 3 or 4 more grub worms, which I never found.
Mm.
And so that's why I tell people, I've had 3 ounces of water in my canteen trying to figure out how I was going to make that last for 2 days, depending on where I was. So, you appreciate little bitty things. I appreciate clean water. I appreciate food that doesn't have a bunch of bugs in it, heat, air conditioning, a TV. There's little bitty things that you don't think about that, being on your own makes you appreciate,
Mm.
and realize how blessed you really are and how bad it could be,
Yes.
you know. So that's one of the reasons I teach my students. You may have to really hurt in order to survive, depending on what's going on. So you want to be able to survive. The samurai had another creed. You know, my Triyoshin lower abdomen. That is my home. So wherever I am, I'm at home.
Ocean.
You know,
Mm.
so you learn to survive in any situation at any area. That you do. So this is why our community kind of needs to do other things. For example, in Katrina, uh, there was this one brother I read about when the water started coming in the homes and coming up.
Mm.
He was he climbed in his attic like a lot of them did, and he saw this old canoe that his dad had passed away years ago
Wow.
had.
In the attic.
And he said we had several garage sales where we tried to sell that canoe, but in our community nobody wanted to buy a canoe.
Wow.
And so that's what he used. And it took him several days. He rode 60 miles to get out,
Wow.
but he had forgotten about it. He said, we tried several times to sell that old canoe at garage sales. Nobody wanted it. And that's what got him out. And you see things like that, we didn't do as much. For example, You saw on the news them dropping water bottles to the brothers on the roof catching them, from the
Yes.
helicopter.
Yes.
And a lot of people got sick from drinking that soil water because it had all those chemicals in it.
Wow.
And so, well, and that's why I got into, disaster preparedness. People ask, well, Keith, you camper, backpacker, hiker, was there things they could have done? I said, yes, to us, it was an inconvenience. It's like having a spare tire and a jack. If you know what to do and how to do it, you'll be late. You may be sweaty if it's hot, but for the most part, it shouldn't kill you
Mm.
changing the jack. So, but we didn't do anything like that.
Mm.
So, we relied on other people or other groups to help us. There was a declaration put out that everybody go to the Superdome. You heard about that? And so all these thousands of people came, but the people that were supposed to come there with the buses, they said, "No, I'm getting my own family and getting out of here. There is no more New Orleans. What they gonna do? Fire me?" That's why a lot of police left.
Mm.
They said, "What they gonna do? There's no more New Orleans." And so they drove to Tennessee because they could. And when they told everybody to leave, like one elderly lady said, who's in civil rights in New Orleans, she said, "How are they going to leave? Fly 90% of us depend on public transportation. So we couldn't fly. So how are we going to leave?" And so that's because you don't have enough people that do things other than what's considered, the normal things
Mm.
that we do, such as camp. But there were groups who were in Metairie and other cities. Once they got through Katrina, they started buying these old utility trucks, old ice cream trucks, converting them to a 4-bed ambulance with oxygen, medical supplies. And they
Awesome.
started doing that. Guess
Awesome.
what we did?
Awesome.
Yeah. And so but our community, number one, the funds wasn't there for us to do that, but also the desire was not there to do that either that much, from what I could see, because the crisis was over,
Hmm.
and so you know, uh, people don't go out and buy flashlights and water until the hurricanes,
Already here.
like in Florida. You should have had that stuff in the garage months ago. And now everybody rushes to Home Depot to buy boards to put over the windows. See, that should, it's really too late to do that. And that's just human nature. But see, our community can't afford to do that less than other communities. Because at least if your family's going hiking, camping, backpacking, you kind of know some things you can do, without, and so but other so our community, we don't, do those things. So simple stuff like having camp stoves, camp heaters, little things that you may need for a disaster would actually you use it for camping.
Mm.
Remember when I had that motorhome? I don't know if you remember. Now I used to
No.
come to San Antonio. I had a classy motorhome, and I came with it. And so I used to drive that to the tournaments and carry, 10 or 12 students in it. We slept in it a couple of times to save on motel.
Yeah.
And so people where I lived in Dallas say, yeah, when the times to keep drove that motor, we knew because he was the only black man around here driving a motor home, going places. There was a few more. I wasn't the only one. There was a few more, but a couple of them made a joke about it, said that, and everybody was shocked that I would buy something like that. But I go, well, I like the outdoors, so I'm in it a lot, and it's a base camp. So I park that somewhere at a state or national park, and then hike into the back country. So
Oh,
it's a matter of enlightening yourself, wanting to enlighten yourself, like what you're doing, with this program. See, this is going to reach a lot of people, and so you have a variety of different opinions, viewpoints, theories that help, that make us grow as a community. That's why I'm so proud of you doing this because this is going to help a lot of people in many different ways, in many guests that you have. You know, people of color who are pilots, people of color who are divers. To give our children a different perspective on career choices that they can make later on that they don't see too many of us doing. And so that's why being a martial arts instructor or master like yourself, see, you're an example that, what you can do, because 40, 50 years ago, you didn't see too many, hardly any.
Mm.
And so that's why now, with video and with Zoom and the internet, you can reach out, and do things and build. So I'm real proud of you for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just very thankful to be having your wisdom on here. I remember even like 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, uh, I remember thinking to myself, I was hearing the different stories that you're telling. I was like, wow, interesting. Very interesting. You're hearing not only your thought process, you're hearing the experiences that is fueling this knowledge, and that you're so open and willing to share it. It totally makes sense that people should be hearing this information. This is raw knowledge. This is actual knowledge, and and the best part that I like about it is that it supersedes all creeds, all colors, all people.
Yeah,
I mean, it's practical knowledge, and to not hear it or be open to hear it, I think is opening you or anyone who is not able to absorb this wisdom. It's putting them in a spot where they're going to have to suffer, or the people that they know and love
exactly.
are going to
Yeah,
have to suffer for it by just not being willing to one, listen, two, implement. Even if you just take a little bit here, a little bit there, just add it up. It's really about the consistency and the mentality, and then be positive. I'd rather have the flexibility to be positive about something rather than be into a negative mentality all the time about how things are. If you're prepared
hmm,
for it, it opens the door to gratitude that one, you have access to all these things, and two, that you have this place that you can go to that allows you to connect with the rest of the world. So
hmm.
on that note, I guess that shall be the end of our time today. I know that I
Okay.
definitely would love to hear you some more of your wisdom again, hear some more angles.
Anytime, sir. Anytime. Just give me a call. I'm just so proud that you're doing this. Tell your family I said hi.
Absolutely, I will.
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate who you are, and thanks for shining in this world. I love you. Thank you.
Oh, the honor is mine, sir. Thank you for doing this. Thank you. And tell all your students, when I'm down there, I'll do some things with them. So, let them know I like to meet them and see what they're doing. Or, okay, you guys want to come up here one time in the Pacific Northwest, you know, uh, I can show you to Olympics, the Cascades Mountains, go hiking. Sometimes you can go on some of the shores, see whales, whale pods merging. So, totally different. I've even trained on the beaches here. You can watch seal herds come up to rest. It's that's why I moved here. 'Cause I've always wanted to live in the Pacific Northwest. So totally. Tell all the guys in San Antonio I said hi. Ernest, Mike Craven, all the groups. I said hi,
Absolutely.
and tell them to drop me a line every now and then.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to end our show today. And thank you all
Mhm.
for listening. And feel free to send information if you want to learn more about how Master Keith Sharp's program is presented. If you'd like to get in touch with him or connect with him at how he's teaching these arts. And as you've heard, it's not just martial arts. It's not just kicking and punching. It's so much more. If you're just looking for a survival expert or survival opinion, disaster preparedness, if you're thinking about the martial mindset, if you're thinking history, martial arts history, this is one of the golden spots to go to. So just let me know if anyone has any questions or would like to get in touch with him. And thank you all and have a good evening.